Hi, my name's Emma and let's talk spooky stuff. Welcome back, friends. Today I'm very excited because I was not planning on watching this series, but when it came out, I just gave the first episode a go and I have a lot of thoughts. I asked you on Instagram if you were interested in me talking about my thoughts, and overwhelmingly you were. So here we are. Today I'm going to be discussing the 2020 Netflix series Ratched. Created by Evan Romansky and Ryan Murphy, the show is the backstory of Nurse Ratched, who was created in Ken Kesey's 1962 novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was later adapted in 1975 to a film of the same name, with a star-studded cast including Jack Nicholson, Christopher Lloyd, Danny DeVito, and Scatman Crothers. The film went on to win 5 Oscars, but this new series, Ratched, really does take liberties in changing the source material, bending the iconic role that Louise Fletcher had created into a completely different character. Today I'm going to discuss the story, the stylization, and the message of Ratched and what it means for Nurse Ratched herself. The original book depicts Nurse Ratched as the strict head nurse at a psychiatrical facility in Oregon. There are no personal details about Nurse Ratched in the book other than physical description. But what is important is the introduction of her mean spirit. And this is the result of her being challenged by a new patient who is posing as someone with a mental illness. This changes towards the end of the book when your dislike for the character is set in stone, mainly because of the way they describe the medical procedures and of course the shock therapy. When this was adapted into film in 1975, her legend grew, and she became known as the strict, cold-hearted woman who faces off against the kooky and playful Jack Nicholson. Louise Fletcher, who played Ratched, said she was so disturbed by her own performance that she could not watch the film, but at the core of it, she did feel like her character cared about the patients and wanted what was best for them. But in the Ratched TV series, we see a whole new character. Romansky wrote the script as a way to show off his script writing skills. He told Vulture.com, "I was really trying to think of some sort of IP that I could reimagine as my own and would have a title that people would recognize and actually want to read." In the same interview, Romansky said that the only thing the audience actually knows about her is that she was previously an army nurse, and of course, there is a hint towards her being disgusted by sexual acts in the film, but it is very light, and as I said, she's quite strict and cold and not very personable, so we don't know for sure. It's definitely taking liberties. And so began his redesign of the character with a focus on sexual trauma. The 2020 version of Ratched is played by Sarah Paulson. Without spoilers, Nurse Ratched is presented as a complex woman who was riddled with many demons. Throughout the series, she's extremely emotional, and although struggles for control, is not always firm in her decisions, learning and changing along the way. Aside from her hairstyle, there are no similarities in the book or film. Unlike other movies where actors have to adapt from a known character, Paulson does not take on any mannerisms or quirks that we see in the original materials. What is important to note here is that the Netflix series is a prequel and is meant to actually eventually tie into One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in a later season. So we're seeing one part of her life that happened far before the film. If the show does get picked up for more seasons, they do have plans to eventually tie this in to the film. But if we are revisiting this in a future season, you have to wonder if by then she will lose all personality and become the strict, impersonal figure we experience in the book and in the film. Because in the series, she is anything but that. The script was picked up by Ryan Murphy and then the pilot was written. And Ryan Murphy claims that when he first saw the script, he had envisioned exactly what kind of vibe the show would have and how it would look. Murphy has been criticized by the pigeon box he has built around his stylization, but you have to give him credit, people are still watching. He's well known for his slick modern television style with witty dialogue and taboo bubblegum characters. from Glee to Scream Queens and of course American Horror Story. He's developed his own distinct look and feel to his shows, one that evolved slowly from his earlier work and my personal favorite work of his, which is Popular and Nip Tuck. He now works with a short list of actors and his work is bold, bright and polished, which is a stark contrast from the 1975 film, which is all about cold overhead lighting and sterilized surroundings. And of course the most important aspect, which is the raw grit of humanity. Putting Ratched into this new colorful setting changes the whole feel of her character. Ratched has become a stylish character who works in an aesthetically pleasing hospital, which is somehow struggling with money. With rooms like this, maybe they're using their budget in the wrong area. And this is where I completely disconnect Nurse Ratched 2020 from the original source material. She is a revamped woman that just happens to share the name. And we now know that this is only because of the writer's intent to draw from something people were familiar with. The show is fast-paced, and to keep up with the tension, they utilize split screens as transitions. For me, this is Ryan Murphy trying to switch up the stylization so it looks different to his other productions. American Horror Story. The show started off with a tint that was used to reflect inner turmoil of the characters. I felt like these red and green lights were swapped out instead of using narration to describe the characters' inner dialogue. And I actually enjoyed this part of the stylization. I thought it was really clever and interesting because obviously we'll get into it, but the inner dialogue of the characters isn't what it seems at first. And I thought that this was a good way to swap it out instead of showing those thoughts. But it does fade out throughout the show once we understand the characters' thoughts and desires. We no longer need it as a tool to tell us when someone's mad. But even more interesting enough, I think I found the inspiration for these tints. Clever work, Murphy. I think that this is one of the only ties, stylization-wise, from the original to the TV show. But it's time to get to the spoilers. So if you have not seen the show, I'm about to get into the nitty-gritty in why some people will have a problem with the series. If you have not seen the series yet, big spoiler alert. And also you may not understand some of what I have to say. Although Ratched is listed on IMDb as a crime drama mystery, with the body count and the American Horror Story vibe and the serious backstory, it is undeniably a horror drama series. But what is strange about this series is the drama aspect that at times is so campy and so extreme, it appears to be like a soap opera. For this reason, I did not take the series too seriously, but I enjoyed the theatrics as they came. It's a sappy, bloody series, and although it has many plot holes and character issues, I felt it was enthralling. The small cast of characters that were deeply entwined with polar opposite motivations and desires drew me in, and I had to know where it was going. The show is set in 1947 and starts with Ratched traveling to a psychiatric hospital that is housing a patient who has just killed a group of priests. She is firm and in control of everything around her as she manipulates people to get a job in the hospital. At first, Ratched seems evil and unsympathetic. She is a control freak and her motivations are unknown. So when it is shown that she has connections to the cold-hearted priest killer, suspicions heighten. But as the series develops, those around her begin to crack her hard exterior. Cynthia Nixon's character, Gwendolyn Briggs, is one of the first people to peel back the layers. Big spoilers here, Gwen is revealed to be hiding her sexuality and is a closeted lesbian. Throughout this development and Nurse Ratched witnessing torturous treatments of gay patients, the real Ratched finally peeks through, and it is revealed that she is coming to terms with her own sexuality. But here's where the show gets problematic. As the show develops, many of the patient's mental illnesses are used as plot devices to either make Ratched appear more sympathetic or to heighten the violence, particularly the character of Charlotte Wells, who is diagnosed as someone with DID. Of course, they don't call it DID in the show, they call it multiple personality disorder, obviously because of the time. She is portrayed as violent and used for the sole purpose of heightening the drama and escalating the final few episodes. But I think that the worst portrayal of Charlotte is when they had the doctor hypnotize her and fix her condition within 10 minutes. But back to Ratched, although I did not agree with the way that they were insensitive about other characters' roles to finally crack the facade, and of course use a person with a mental illness as a villain to leverage her development, there is something to be said about a story that can start you off with thinking the main character is a villain and have you rooting for them by the final episode. And ultimately, when the last piece of the puzzle is revealed and we find out the whole truth about Nurse Ratched, Ratched and who she is and everything she went through as a child, which is a really dark story told in a very soap opera, over-the-top, campy way. You can't hold anything that Nurse Ratched did that was negative throughout the whole series against her. She is seen as someone who was wronged, and therefore everything that she did wrong is completely voided. It makes you wonder, finally returning to the source material, why they even bothered linking this up with such an impersonable, dry and cold character. What possibly happened to her in between the series, which is the prequel to the film, that could change her that much? So what was this slick soap opera with a body count really trying to say? One thing the source material and the show have in common is the term the Angel of Mercy. It's the title in 2 of the episodes, and it's also mentioned in the book. Is the show a story of a misunderstood, sympathetic, angelic woman? A woman who really cares about those around her regardless of how it first appears. Summed up, don't judge a hard ass by the cover. But even so, if that was the purpose, what is with episode 8? If you reached episode 7, you'll know Finn Whitrock's character Edmund escapes, and all of Ratched's good intentions are dismissed as he becomes her enemy. Obviously, this is a plot device that is attempting to get the next season off the ground. They're trying to make a buzz, they're trying to create a stir, and they want people to come back for more. But that story has now been told, and if we're taking it season by season, I think it would have worked a lot better to wrap it up in a nice bow. The audience would then feel like they grew with Ratched. They started off feeling like she was this complete cold, and then she did a 180 and she became the hero of the TV show, allowing the audience to grow with her and in turn wanting more. But instead, we're shipped to Mexico with a strange ending involving a dream sequence. It's a no for me. It confuses the whole message of the series and makes it into the same format as other shows that are out there. They decided to go with the soap ending, and in my opinion, this is probably going to come back to haunt them. At the end of the day, you might be surprised to hear after all my criticisms that I actually really enjoyed the show. I don't really talk about something if I felt indifferent to it. I did feel passionate about the show and was very interested in the intertwined storylines. I felt it was very easy to follow and a quick and interesting watch. I'm sure this show will annoy many people for the reasons I've mentioned in this video, but the one thing we can all agree on that I'm the most mad about is what happened to poor Huck. He deserved better. He was the best character in that show. I'm really pissed. I knew they were going to do it. The body count was too high for them not to take that chance. You knew he was not going to come back in season 2. Why did they do that? Just before I go, I do want to mention a couple of facts that I found were really interesting when doing the research for this video, but they didn't really fit anywhere else because I wanted to keep the videos focused on Ratched herself, because otherwise I'd be here for like 2 more hours. I have so much to say. I first watched this series, I re-watched the movie, and then I listened to the audiobook just to make sure I had everything covered. And something that's really interesting to me is what I learned about the author and how they felt about the series. The original book was from the perspective of the character Chief, who is a Native American, and it's all through his eyes what is happening in the facility. And of course they changed this in the movie and they take his narration out completely. And the author was so mad about this, he refused to watch the movie, which is interesting because the movie and the book are really similar and they share a lot of the same dialogue. They just don't have the narration. I also think it's really interesting that the book describes the patients as individuals that are quite smart, and the movie really shows them as lovable characters. And in the TV show, they're presented as victims. Something to think about. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you found it was helpful or if you learned something new from it, please give it a thumbs up. Please let me know all of your thoughts about Ratched, if you like it, what you don't like about it. I can't wait to see what you guys think. Again, I was not planning on watching this series. I really didn't have time for it, but once I got started, I just didn't stop, so I thought it was definitely worthy of letting you guys know about it. I hope you're having a great day. If you have not subscribed, please do. I'd love to make it to 80K by the end of the year, so if you could help me out, that would be great. I do 2 videos every single week talking about horror movies and thrillers, discussions, deep dives, and giving you a lot of recommendations as always. I'll talk to you very soon. Stay spooky. Bye.